order? Sorry.
I have not yet.
Let's do that. We'll call the meeting to order then. And it sounds like everyone is present who needs to be here. Are there any communications?
No communications have been received.
Great. Well, then I'll go ahead and open up public comment. Members of the public may comment on any matter not on this agenda. Please leave your comments to 3 minutes, and members of the public may comment on items when the subcommittee considers them at that time. To make a public comment, use the raise hand icon on your smart device or desktop computer, or dial *9 if you're using just your telephone. Is there anyone with their hand raised, Irene? For an item not on the agenda?
No hands are raised, Vice Chair.
Okay, great. Well, then we'll move on to approval of the minutes. I have had a chance to look those over. How about you, Mr. Mayor?
Yep, move to approve.
All right, so moved. And I agree. We're ready to move on to item 5, current items for discussion. Item A, citizen leash law and dangerous dog regulations. Who would like to kick us off?
I'd be happy to kick off this item and then turn it over to Chief Ferguson. This item regarding the leash law and dangerous or vicious dogs was referred by council in response to some written correspondence that was received expressing concern about dogs off leash in our community. And in response, council did refer this matter for further deliberation and discussion to the Finance, Admin, and Police Subcommittee. In preparation for this subcommittee, Chief Ferguson prepared a memo to the subcommittee members, providing an update on some options, as well as some actions that can be taken to address some of those concerns. And I want to acknowledge the work that the chief has already undertaken to, proactively address, communication with the community and outreach, particularly through our community services officer, and the acknowledgement that we do have existing code requirements in our municipal code that were adopted by council in 2006, and then the earlier code in 1977 that established leash law and penalties for certain violations of the Cloverdale Municipal Code. But with that said, Chief did prepare some items for consideration by the subcommittee for a possible recommendation to the council to further address some of the concerns of our community. So, Chief, you want to provide our subcommittee members with an overview of your memo?
Yeah, I think David, thank you, David. I think he covered quite a bit of it. I'm just going to touch on the fact that, if we recall, during that meeting, we did discuss that there are existing ordinances for leash law that could be enforceable by law enforcement. However, those did not fall high on priority. And there was other concerns about the vicious dog. And unfortunately, we don't have an ordinance in place for that. And the difficulty with that is those types of investigations, they go well beyond the level of just a citation. And it's a challenge from our standpoint because our officers are not trained animal control officers. So their ability to thoroughly investigate significant dog bites is limited in scope. So in response to the council meeting at night, I was directed to come up with some solutions that could benefit to the community as well as our department on how we can address this. So staff researched a couple of options, and the first, of course, is looking in-house by utilizing our community services officer. We looked through her job description and qualifications, and although she has been trained in animal control services, she does not have the ability to write citations, which requires an 832 penal code course. We do have her signed up in May to take that course, which will give her the powers to arrest and write citations. But she'll also need to go through a modified field training program so that she understands how to contact people, how to write citations, but also using officer safety and radio in the process. So it's not just a matter of getting her trained and sending her out there. There's more to it than that. And then we discussed education and public messaging. I think I addressed the importance of this, and I think there was a full agreement on this really being the biggest part of this. So through the use of Nixle, Facebook, the websites, we can provide educational messages to the community relative to the leash laws and enforcement. We can also develop an educational pamphlet that can be made available to the public in any one of the lobbies, City Hall, the police department. But I want to add that since that council meeting, we began on Monday, the 22nd of March, having our community service officer go out to all of the parks every 2 hours and kind of start an education campaign, contacting those who have pets off leash and educating them on the leash law. And to date, that still remains. She still goes out every 2 hours, goes to all the parks, and she's been really successful in educating many members of the public on that. And I think based on what Hector has reported to us today, there's been a pretty good amount of improvement in that area. So that seems to be positive. One of the other avenues we looked at is contracting with North Bay Animal Control Services. I think, as you know, we do contract with North Bay, but it's simply for the pet licensing, and they really don't provide much more to us. They have assisted us on dog bite investigations because we lack that experience. They have helped us out and have even come out and taken a few dogs for us back to the shelter when needed. So it's been very helpful. But we wanted to look at a much larger scope of services and see what that would look like. And I believe there's an attachment you'll see there that has full services that they would render for our staff, our community, which would be having an officer readily available here in our city, actively going through the city, the parks, working from an education standpoint, but also issuing citations. But it would also include major investigations, identifying dangerous, vicious dogs, kennels, educating in the schools, educating through Nixle and public forums. And as you can see, the full cost of that 7 days a week, 24 hours a day on an annual basis is $48,000 per year, and that equates to $4,000 a month. So we entertained the idea of, okay, can we keep that cost down? What if we extended a contract that went to like 3 years? Could we keep that cost down a little bit? And they were in agreement. They would offer the option, the fourth option here is they would offer the exact same services, just 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday, but would be on call for Sunday and Monday. And for that service, as you can see, year one, it's a pretty minimal cost for all services. Again, I think the key takeaway here, this is for everything related to animal control services. And this is a big ordeal because there's a lot that goes into this. So you can see by that fourth year, you're at that 32,000 mark, or 2,600, roughly 2,666 a month. So that's significantly lower than the other cities I spoke to and asked about their services. They were all they loved the services. They thought it was a great working relationship. They really, really liked having the services in their city. I was blown away at what those other cities pay for that service. Healdsburg there, it's $253,800 a year for that service. And I just got Windsor's report today. I wanted to include this, but it didn't make it in time. But I will tell you that Windsor responded and they pay $216,000 annually for a 3-year contract. And that in a nutshell is pretty much all the same services that we would be asking for. And a lot of that is based on population. When I'm in talking to the director of North Bay, because he came right off and told us what he could give, what would it cost to give us full services with somebody here in our city. I was real concerned about having somebody responsive from out of the area, because by the time you get here, the likelihood that it's still occurring is long gone, and then we kind of don't really solve anything. So that kind of gives a little bit of a breakdown of what other cities are paying for that service, and then what we could include or what we would get for that service with the attachment. And if there are any questions at this time, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Yeah, I have a quick question, unless Jason, you have something right away.
Go ahead and go first.
Right. Oh, sorry, city manager, did you have something to add? I think I cut you off, sorry.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I was just going to add, well, thank you, Chief, for your overview of those options. One thing that might be missing from the analysis that is in the scope of work provided by North Bay is specialized vehicles and equipment that they bring as part of that service. Now there is very specialized vehicles that is necessary to transport animals and different types of animals, as well as all the host of equipment that goes along with fully supporting a vehicle to be able to address especially a vicious animal. If you can imagine, there's a lot of specialized equipment and to do it in a way that's not detrimental to the health of the animal. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. It may or may not be obvious that kind of burdened in that cost is the cost of operating that equipment, and so it may not be evident why our officers, even if they were trained, you need a whole host of other supporting equipment and infrastructure to support the ability to be able to actually provide the service locally.
Yeah, and facilities too. So
Right.
Yeah. I want to add one thing to that too that I didn't mention, but it should be in the contract, is this also includes wildlife. It's not just domestic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he did mention, like, if you had like an injured animal, like a deer or something to that effect. But these do come into play when we talk about droughts and some of the mountain lions and whatnot that do start to come around, into the cities looking for food and or water. So it's just something to think about that also includes that.
Oh, okay. That's good information. So sorry. Yeah. Jason, did you have anything immediate?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? Murphy's Law, we're right at that weird spot.
Of course. Yeah, give it a shot. And if not, we'll swing back to you.
All right, great. So
And there it is.
Now we lost
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
like
Yeah.
what I hear, in a sense that it.
Yeah, Jason, hold on for a second. You're in a weird spot.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
about that.
I'm gonna go ahead. Hopefully, you'll be clear in a couple of minutes. So my question was, first of all, the complaints that had come in recently were really, in the neighborhoods. They weren't in parks. So I just was wondering, obviously parks are a great place to do the outreach for the community services, but were there complaints there in the parks that we didn't hear about?
So that's an excellent question. We started in the parks just because the parks, there's a lot of people that bring their dogs, unhook them from leashes and let them roam in the parks. We have found this to be very evident, particularly at City Park. And so that's why we focused on the parks. But for the most part, our community service officers out and about in her vehicle all around the city. Yeah. So we did specifically ask her to do the every 2 hours in the parks. And we have found a significant amount of people violating the leash law in the parks.
Okay, well, that answers that question. Okay. And then just to follow up, so the contracts that you were comparing from Windsor and Healdsburg, it's with the same entities that we're using, correct? So
that is correct.
So mostly the price is population based, which is, it's kind of nice that we don't have a flat fee that we have to meet.
No, and for him to even start at 48,000 when you comparatively looking at Windsor and Healdsburg, it's not even in the neighborhood. And I confirmed with him, is there something different that they're getting that puts that price up there that Cloverdale wouldn't? And they get, it would be the same services. So yeah, I'm not, and maybe they get way more calls than we do. I don't know 100% there, but I was pretty surprised to see the contract.
Well, they're a lot bigger. Population wise, it's a little bit exponentially, but bigger, but not much. Right. So, okay. So let's see if we can hear the mayor this time. You want to try again, Jason?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
So one new question that I have that Melanie just kind of brought to mind is, I all of a sudden my mind went to the Sonoma County bus with the shuttle program that we have. And they gave us a contract with pricing based on anticipated need. And then there was kind of this deal that if at the end of the year they found that more folks rode the bus than they may have anticipated, then they would create, kind of a prorated deal for the year moving forward. And so enough talking about what's not on the agenda. Have you had anything similar to that discussed in this contract where, he might be giving you, or he or she might be giving you a bid based on what they think our call volume is going to be, what they think their needs are going to be in Cloverdale? But what if realities are different than what they thought? Did they discuss where any openers might be?
So no is the answer to that, but let me start with, I never provided him any statistics about the kind of call volume we have. So
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to tell you that it's based in any way, shape, or form in that, whether or not we get reduced costs because of service. What I do believe is, comparatively speaking, it was much cheaper. And then he was also willing to work with us when we offered up a cheaper cost at an extended contract period over a 3-year period where the costs were lower, and the overall end, it would be lower than $48,000 a year, as you can see. So,
Right.
The bottom line is it was really based on that, but also providing us the service. My biggest point was we wanted somebody here and visible, patrolling our streets, patrolling our parks, patrolling areas, that might be concerning. We just wanted them here, and we were going to be afforded that. And that was a really big part of this. And that's, to me, those stood out more than, any kind of reduced cost based on, how many calls they get. And they're going to handle
Sure.
everything. Have we had vicious dog bite calls? Yes. Are they all the time? No. But you really only have to have one that can pay for a lot, and it does make sense to that degree.
Sure. Okay. And then thank you, Chief. I appreciate that context. That helps a lot. The other thing I really liked about what you were describing is, while it may have been unleashed dogs and really terrible experiences that led us to this point, it sounds like this product can address that, in addition to other things that would also allow your officers to potentially focus their efforts elsewhere. Did I understand that correctly? Even if at a low volume?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that was kind of
And-
my question too, Jason. If I can kind of add on to that, I just was wondering if this would free up, some of Teresa's time too, for doing other tasks when they're on. They're going to be, they would be off Sunday and Monday, or sorry, what were the 2 days?
Yes, that's correct. Sunday,
Yeah.
Monday, but also on call and
And then
readily available. From my understanding, he would come from Healdsburg on days if it was an on-call basis.
Okay, yeah, I'm just wondering if it would also, free up Teresa to do some of the other things that she's doing. I don't have a feel for the total number of hours that she's spending on animal control, but it seems to me it's significant.
Well, and here's another part that's really critical to that is even though there's animal control training in that, again, she's limited in her ability to investigate that. She's not a sworn officer and she's not an animal control officer. So she can do the best she can with the limited resources available and limited knowledge that she has. But here we wouldn't have any question about what needs to be done, how it needs to follow the laws and be appropriately done. But also we've purposely dedicated her to those every 2 hours of every day that she's here in those parks. And she's been consistently doing that. So if you just look at it from what we've been doing from March 22nd, she's devoted a lot of time to that and less on her other projects like evidence processing and the other things that come with her job description.
So sorry, Jason, I just wanted to follow up on that when we could. So sorry, Mr. Mayor, finish up.
No, absolutely. No, thank you. No, that's the
Yeah.
collaboration we need right now because
Yeah.
Obviously my mind is nervous, right? Because all we have talked about this year is we really, really, really have to be careful of our costs, right? And so the things that I like about this is what I heard in your statement was we have more of an ability to ensure compliance. And compliance in the enforcement world to me is also risk mitigation, because I'm not versed enough in that to know when things get dangerous. So if you're telling me that it improves compliance, that to me says risk mitigation. But I guess to cut right down to the quick, whether we like it or not, and whoever wants to take this can we bear the cost? and because I would hate to walk us down this path and the answer comes back and goes, well, we really can't bear this cost. So, I mean, if the concept moving forward is, kind of the cautious optimism, like, yeah, I really believe we can bear this cost, then I truly like what I'm hearing. And I like that it checks more boxes than just the immediate need we have with leash laws. We get, almost for lack of a better term, more value out of it.
Mhm.
And so I haven't heard anything egregious. I think it's a well comprehensive plan, Chief. I think you did some incredible research. I like the idea that it allows us to repurpose Teresa's time more structured. Right now, 2 hours a day over an 8-hour shift, or every 2 hours over an 8-hour shift, minus lunch. We're looking 3-4 trips around to the parks every day. I imagine that could be better time spent elsewhere. And so I really like what I'm hearing. I just would hate to walk us down a path if the honest truth is we can't bear the cost, because then my approach would be, let's see if our current measures move the needle before we pull this lever. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. And Vice Chair, I really welcome your input on this.
I'm
Truly
right there. I'm right there with you. I mean, I think that, for as long as I've lived in town, 20 years, I've had so many conversations with people, whether I was a council member or not, about, why aren't there animal control services here? Why can't I, if there's even if there's, whether it's an issue with a dog or, a neighbor's dog, or, an injured, injured animal, like, an injured raccoon or something like that. It's like, what am I supposed to do? Trap it and take it in my car and take it down to Santa Rosa. So I think there's a lot of actual demand for this kind of pent up demand. So, but it doesn't mean anything if we can't afford it. So I think that the value that we would get and the risk mitigation that we would get are really valuable. The question is, do we have the cash flow? So I guess I'd leave that up to city manager and our finance director. So, yeah.
I'm going to put one more thing back on you to think about here too. Because this gives you options, you may want to consider, does option 3 look the best, where you do 1 year to determine, with that cost, did we get what our money was worth, right?
Yeah. Right.
And you get to see if that was in the best interest of the city versus the 3 year. But from a cost saving standpoint, and I'm confident what they're going to provide will be well worth the money. But from a cost saving standpoint, obviously 4 would be the best route.
Is there any benefit with REMIF if we have these kinds of services or don't have these kind of services?
Well, I think you always have that. We talk about risk management. You always have where something wasn't enforced and it was on city property. I mean, David might be able to back me on this. There's always a little bit of that risk when it comes to the city property that's public, where there's potential for a dog bite or something where it wasn't enforced.
Well, even if it wasn't on city property, if we didn't have the ability to prosecute a case or investigate it, wouldn't we be open to litigation as well, whether or not it was on city property?
I mean, if within city limits, anyone can.
Yeah, within city limits.
Yeah, anyone can name us.
Yeah.
Whether we're responsible or not.
Yeah.
Right.
We can be named. So, and then there's, the deductible. That's our minimum, and so if you consider one deductible at 25,000, then
that pays for a year. That's about, it's like looking back at the packet. I mean, that's about a year.
Yeah, and I mean, we have not been claimed, and we have not had any deductibles.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you have to at that point just kind of weigh your liability and roll the dice one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, okay. So financially, David, what do we think?
Well, I think clearly it's a council choice if this is a expense that we want to build into our budget, and ultimately we want to bring it back to council with the options, and if the subcommittee wants to recommend a particular option, make that recommendation to council. I think the way I look at it is that it's more about service enhancement than it is maybe in this particular instance risk mitigation, but certainly risk is important. And we are a community that has, a significant amount of folks who have, pets, and this is
Oh, we're
about.
just like lousy with dogs. This is Dogville. I mean, it's crazy. More so, I mean, seriously, I think if we did a survey, we have so many dogs per household in this city compared to other cities. I mean, so Mr. Mayor, I mean, what I'm kind of inclined to recommend is that we go send this to council for recommendation, and then when the public, are you landed? You landed?
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
This is when the public can come and participate and it just talk about it. It's like, I think that there would be support throughout the community, for these enhanced services, because I think it's something that a lot of people have wanted for a long time. So I'm ready to send it to the council, let the public participate, and the council decide if it's a financial priority.
I agree with that, and I'm almost of a mind to kind of put my endorsement behind the I guess endorsement's not the right word, but anyhow,
Your
behind
support.
the 3-year support behind the 3-year contract, and kind of lock in these savings while we can.
Mhm.
I hesitate to do a 1-year contract with an opener 1 year from now, and then all of a sudden the rates just aren't what we're talking about today. And then we kind of dangled a carrot that isn't necessarily available, but that could be being overtly cautious. So that's where my mind is right now, but I absolutely agree. Let's send it to council, and however we choose to package that, I can get mine.
Yeah, I agree, and because I think what I anticipate is that if we start educating the community, put the services that are now available out, on the website, in pamphlets, on Nixle, it's being publicized that these services are now available. I imagine we will see an increase of volume and reporting, and people utilizing the full spectrum of the services. So, I support. And then, I'd love just for Teresa to be spending her time, where she can be the most productive. And there are other issues, rather than chasing the same dog down the same neighborhood street that gets out every single day. Let's actually solve the problem and move on. So it sounds like, you have enough information.
So what I hear from the chair and vice chair is support for moving this to council. It sounds like there's a general recommendation for option 4 to contract with North Bay for the 4-year.
3 or 4. I think we're kind of, around 3, 3 or 4.
And to ask council whether they support that option, and if they do, we can build this into our budget and bring that forward as part of a full picture of how this would impact this really, I would think, would be within the police budget, along with the existing contract with North Bay.
Do we foresee any? This just popped into my head. Do we foresee any concerns from our labor groups about bringing this service in on a contracted basis?
I don't immediately, because we don't have an existing animal control officer that we would be supplanting with these services, and
Okay.
and there's no we don't have anybody trained with that certification ready to provide this service. So if we were supplanting an existing position, I think we might, but I don't readily see that as a labor issue, though they certainly could bring that forward. But again, we don't have a position open within our MOU that provides this with this title.
Yeah, works for me then. Thanks, David.
Great, sounds good. So with that, I'll hand the steering wheel back over to the mayor.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate your help as always. I apologize. Sometimes the onset of these meetings are a little bit, anyhow, I'll carry on. So next we will move on to still in section 5, we're gonna do B, federal appropriations for community funding requests. And I think David, you and Susie will probably do this one.
Yeah, Mayor.
Chair, if I may interrupt, just for clarification, because we do have audience members, you mind just opening up the item? For
Oh,
public?
thank you.
Oh, I
Irene. Absolutely.
totally
I'm
threw
so
you
sorry.
under, I threw you under the bus.
No, that's
Sorry
okay.
about
I
that.
should have looked. I should have looked. Are there any, I can see our attendees. So Debbie, Linda, Shannon, if any of you guys would like to speak, feel free to raise your hand. I'm happy to take any comments, questions, anything like that. Linda.
Okay, you can hear me now?
We can indeed. Sorry about that,
Yeah.
Linda. Thanks for raising
That's
your hand
okay.
and offering comment.
Yeah, I guess I appreciate all the information I heard, and I think, you know, you have to have a way to pay for it. So let's make sure that we have that, because we have all these other things going on, and, you know, soon we're going to be talking about doubling our water bills. So I feel like that we need to have a way to pay for it. I don't know if this is the right forum, but just to put it out there, that maybe if we had a dog park, people would not violate leash laws as much, because as someone mentioned, we have a lot of dogs in this community and we really don't have anywhere to take them where we can take them off leash. So
Right.
that's a thought too. And just to comment on talking about the liability, whether or not we have an officer here that specifically can do that doesn't mitigate the fact that someone can sue you for absolutely no reason. So I don't know that that's a very good, you know, argument in that whole thing. But I mean, I personally support that we should have people who are trained to handle animals. And, you know, I like the idea. I just know, as you mentioned, Mayor, many times in this conversation, the city doesn't seem to have any money, so we have to be able to pay for it.
Right.
So thank you.
For your, absolutely. Thank you, Linda. Appreciate that. And again, I apologize if we almost blew right past you there. All right. Any other comments from members of the community at this time?
No,
All
I
right.
don't.
Seeing none, we'll go ahead and carry on. So yeah, federal appropriations for community funding requests, please.
Okay, I'll address this item. This is in regards to our federal legislators, particularly Congressman Huffman and Congressman Thompson, reestablishing earmarks for their districts. I think it's actually a function of the change in parties in Congress, that there's interest in reestablishing earmarks as part of the fiscal year 22 federal appropriation process. So both Congressman Thompson and Congressman Huffman are in the process of asking jurisdictions, counties, special districts, cities for projects that they would like to be considered for special appropriations by the federal government during next year's federal budget. And we wanted to bring this forward because there's a really short turnaround time for submitting projects. And to both of them, I think the due date is actually the 12th. So we didn't have enough time to bring it back to council. We thought this was the appropriate committee to just get some immediate feedback on, one, whether to submit a project for appropriations, and if so, if you have support for a particular project for which we can submit. There is some criteria that has been at least utilized in the past for earmarks. Again, earmarks haven't been in use for a number of years now. But one of the key criteria for earmarks is that the project is essentially shovel ready or ready to go. And they want to see, I think, interested in community projects that bring, benefits to your community, that have, significant impacts to the population. And senior staff has been working on identifying projects for possible consideration of earmarks. Kind of top of list in my mind is the revitalization of our police department, which this subcommittee has reviewed and discussed in the past, because I feel like it's critical to public safety and operations for our community in terms of emergency preparedness. But there's also a number of key infrastructure projects that our Public Works Department has determined, would be a key priority. Those tend to be much larger public infrastructure projects, including evaluating moving towards a advanced treatment process at our wastewater treatment facility, completing the realignment of the downtown stormwater and flood protection program or project, redoing our master plan, or not redoing our master plan, but revamping City Park in accordance with our master plan. And last but not least, completing a number of transportation and pedestrian improvements along South Cloverdale, or along the entire section of Cloverdale Boulevard. So those are kind of the key projects that were identified by staff. And really, because it's such a short turnaround time, and I know we're going to be in significant competition with our other neighboring cities that are in both of those congressional districts to get in projects, one to get feedback and input from our finance, admin, and police subcommittee. And staff, you're welcome to offer any additional comments or statements about projects that we've discussed at senior staff.
David, I was curious, is there a downside to applying for all of the projects? Because I did notice that the application didn't seem super complicated. Maybe I missed something there, but
I think we could. My sense with earmarks is that they really want to see the funding, if allocated, be put to immediate use. And so, you have to have the environmental work done. There has to be a community benefit. Unless on these larger projects, you just want to get funded like a feasibility study, which would be ideal for our wastewater treatment plant project. It's really they want to see. I think our federal representatives want to see this funding, get utilized quickly and get utilized in good purpose fairly rapidly, so that the benefits accrue to our communities for these potential funding sources. There's going to be, I should say that this is just one set of funding opportunities that is being provided by the federal government. Again, earmarks are something that's been being brought back, I think, because of, again, the change in parties at the federal level. But with the federal infrastructure bill working its way through the process, there's going to be, I think, those are going to be opportunities for us to submit, those other projects, whether it be the, looking at, redoing our wastewater treatment plant to an advanced treatment process, or some of those larger scale pedestrian or traffic improvement projects as well. So, Chair and Madam Vice Chair, just want to see if you have any direction or input you'd like to share with staff. My recommendation, because I think it is an important project for our community, and it seems like one that our federal legislatures, in particular, Congressman Huffman, can rally behind, would be support for our revamping our police department, or police station, I should say.
Yeah, I was Melanie, do you mind if I ask a quick question here real quick?
Oh, not at all.
I was talking with Una. She's the mayor of Sebastopol, and she was telling me that one of the challenges with this this grant, or this funding, if you will, is that you use the term shovel ready, and she almost kind of took it a step further, where she's like, you can't be invoiced. It can't be something that you're just about ready to do. It's almost like you need to have the check written and they're going to give you an immediate reimbursement kind of thing. Is that how you understood it as well? I mean, do we have a competitive chance here? Not that it would discourage me from trying, but, just to kind of set expectations a little bit.
maybe a technical explanation of shovel ready, because I think that there's a conception of what shovel ready is and what the reality of shovel ready is. So you can put your planning and community development hat back on, David, for a minute. You got to talk about it in those terms, because I think that that's what's confusing for a lot of folks.
Right, completely understood. And again, unfortunately, it's coming to us very quickly with very short timelines, without any detailed federal legislation that provides kind of the specifics, criteria under which we would want to evaluate against each of these projects. So just our sense is that they want to be able to put funding to immediate use. So for something that is going to take a longer term, doing design work, doing environmental work. All of a sudden now you're looking at a timeline that's 3 to 5 years down the road, and it's not quite ready to go. That's going to be more of a long-term planning project. Whereas something like the police station, where we don't have bid specs prepared to date, and that could put us behind in terms of applying for funds. We know there's or we have at least a strong sense that there's tremendous community support and support by council to revitalize that building to meet current standards, and maybe rather than going for a larger sum to actually revitalize the building, it could be ask for a more modest sum just to do the design and improvements. So we can, come in with a more modest approach. My request of staff was, think big but reasonable. So we kind of came in with let's go for the whole enchilada in terms of redoing our police station.
Thank you. That helps. And because it doesn't have the same level of environmental study, engineering study involved due to the nature of the project, it's more in line to be achievable within this very restrictive time frame that you've been provided. Is that kind of what I'm hearing in summary?
Exactly, Mayor. That's my perspective. That we can deliver a project, within a relatively short time frame. Whereas I think the other larger infrastructure projects, probably why they have tremendous value and merit, just the time frame for delivery is probably 2 to 3 times longer than what it would take to redo our police station.
Cool. Thank you. That's very clear. Thank you. Melanie, any other questions before I open it up to the public?
Yeah, I guess, it's tough because, you don't want to necessarily do all of the, do the EIR and do the plan if you're not going to have the money, because by the time you find the money, the plan and the EIR, other things could have happened, and you find out that you could have actually, you should have spent that planning money doing something else. So, this is just really a bass-backward. This is why people get frustrated with government, because we have so many real needs. I mean, everything in that capital improvement program right now is vital, so I'm inclined just off the bat to definitely support the police station, because it just checks so many boxes for us.
Yep.
Wildfire, PSPS, pandemic ain't over. And on and on and on. Not to, the biggest danger to that building is, ironically, as we're going into a drought, it's flooding. But I guess it's like that's the most obvious danger in the building. This, the other danger in the building is that it isn't pandemic ready either. It's not, so it's just compounded that the public safety of this community is dependent on us to be able to have a police station that we can be pretty confident is going to be around in an emergency. So, and I'm just wondering, also I'm thinking that some of the other kind of downtown flood control projects also make it more feasible to keep the police station where it is, at least for now. So I would be inclined to support, any project that would also lead to downtown flood control. But again, the timeline on those projects may not be realistic. But that's kind of where mine, if I had to make a choice, I'd go for the police station and for downtown flood control, to say that in order for this project to really be feasible long-term and to have multiple benefits, we've got to have the flood control or creek rehabilitation project as well. In addition to that, just the unfunded mandates at the water treatment plant and the sewer plant. We know we're probably not going to be getting money from the state of California for those mandated changes. So let's take federal money for those if that's possible. So those are kind of my big funding priorities. Because I think that we'll, and of course, there might be multiple rounds for infrastructure. There's probably going to be a round for transportation, and maybe we'll be able to apply for some of that with rehabilitating Cloverdale Boulevard, because that's like an everyday thing that people are would be either riding their bikes more or have a better quality of life, or being able to enjoy being outdoors more and enjoy. It would benefit the businesses in town if we had if we improve the quality of Cloverdale Boulevard. So that also would have multiple impacts. But I do have to say the police station would be my number one. So I think we're pretty much on the same page. But it's tough because it's like, we don't have the funding or the staff bandwidth to have done the planning to have these shovel ready projects. And it's really frustrating. So I guess if we have to, we have to create priorities with the best odds, I guess those would be my priorities.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And I think, well, before I get into that, let me see. Anybody from the public like to comment on this? I can see if any hands go up. Not seeing any hands. Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Yeah, and I think another thing that we can address as well is Kevin mentioned in the onset of the presentation that quite possibly we can apply for more than one. So maybe the dialogue is, if we can only apply for one, I think there's a general consensus from Melanie and I that based on your report, the police station has the highest chance for success. If we are able, and there's enough staff bandwidth in order to do so, apply for more than one, I foresee us taking a prioritization approach where police station is maybe first and has the highest chance for success. Then we get into the feasibility study for downtown improvements. I think there was flood mitigation that was being talked about. And then below there, it sounds like there is a feasibility study for getting into the meat of the unfunded mandates for the wastewater treatment plant. And so if there is a possibility that we can apply for all three and see which one gets, if any, get the funding, that would be awesome. But if we can only apply for one, it sounds like, and I'm going to invite Melanie to correct me if I'm misunderstanding here, that due to its likelihood of success compared to the other options, the police station is where we'd like to see that go. Do you concur with that, Melanie?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Does that help, city staff? Do you have what you need in that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Vice Chair. I think you gave us the appropriate feedback for us to respond to this.
I prefer to see a civic building with police and city hall. That would, I would love to consider that, because the police station is in terrible shape and city hall is right behind it.
Right.
And I think that really should have been part of our plan all along, but that's just my opinion.
And I want to emphasize that I believe there's going to be opportunities for us to further evaluate and prioritize the larger infrastructure projects as part of the the federal infrastructure plan that President Biden brought forth on March 31st. We're still it still has to make its way through the House and Senate, but with some relatively support, I think that we'll have a better sense of what the legislation actually provides for. And it sounds like there will be some buckets, whether it's transportation or whether it's other projects, parks, that then we can bring to council for prioritization. And assuming it's going to be a multi-year effort, be able to bring those projects forward for council's ultimately prioritization ranking, and then we can plug those into the infrastructure plan once we know more about it and it gets approved.
Awesome. All right. Any final comments before we move on from this item?
Well, I'll just say that all of my Zoom controls have frozen, so I'm actually probably going to have to quit and come back in.
Okay.
So
You
I'm
wanna
going to do that. I'm going to do that right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It doesn't even want to let you leave.
It won't
You're
even
here
let
to
me
stay.
leave. I think I'm,
You're here
and
to
I can't
stay.
mute myself, so I'll have to be really quiet, or I have to restart my computer. Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll move over to my iPad.
Yeah,
I'll do
let
that.
us know if you need a couple minutes. Otherwise, I'll let David get into the presentation here. Do
Yeah,
you want
go right ahead. Yeah,
All right.
I'll switch over to my iPad.
All right.
It's great to have a
David, when you're
backup.
ready. So now we're going to get into a reopening plan for City Hall. And David, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Vice Chair. The agenda item included in the agenda packet, excuse me, is a draft City of Cloverdale reopening plan for COVID. I'm gonna just take a little bit of time, so hopefully you'll bear with me to walk through this plan. There's a number of elements to it. I first want to just acknowledge that through the pandemic, which we've been in for just over a year now, I believe staff, your city staff has made a number of accomplishments despite working under the impacts of COVID and the shelter in place order that was issued by our Sonoma County Health Officer. What we've put together is a plan that involves a phased approach of reopening our City Hall, acknowledging that there are still some risks and concerns relative to where we stand with respect to COVID in our community. And the blueprint, or excuse me, the plan that I've provided does reference the blueprint for a safer economy. That's the blueprint that was developed by the state that set risk levels, and those risk levels were tied to key indicators or metrics for reopening. And as we start to see we're making progress and moving through the tiers, we were for a long period of time in the purple tier, which suggested that the COVID was widespread in our community, and many non-essential indoor operations were closed. But we're starting to see movement as some of those metrics are improving, with us recently moving into the red tier. And we've now been at least our metrics are indicating that we're now kind of targeting the moderate or orange tier in the blueprint. Haven't moved there yet because we have to be there for at least 2 weeks before we can actually move to that risk tier. But that just kind of provides the context for the plan. I want to acknowledge that we really kind of look at 3 sectors for our city. One has been the critical infrastructure, which includes our airport, water, sewer, and police department. all of those have been open, with modifications, during the closures that were in effect during COVID. We continue to provide a high level of service, continue to maintain and provide, water service at our water treatment plant, continuing to provide wastewater services. Our airport has remained operational. Our streets crews continue to provide street services. And our police department all along has continued to provide public safety services, albeit with modifications. All of our critical staff have, while they've reported to work, they continue to maintain appropriate measures to address potential impacts, including physical distancing, face masking, and sanitation, both in their workplaces and in their places of work, which often can be in the field. Likewise, we've also closely followed the county health guidance in the state California Department of Public Health relative to our outdoor play areas in our parks. We know that for a while our parks were fairly restricted in terms of allowable activities, but those have since been opened back up with again modifications, and even our play areas now are open. But kind of last but not least is City Hall and our Department of Public Works Annex. Our offices, because of the small space within City Hall and the nuances of the health order, found it very, very difficult to be able to meet all the criteria in terms of physical distancing, as well as face masking in a relatively small environment. Most of city staff at my direction were directed to work remotely, and there were some staff that who were unable to do that because they were kind of critical for front door operations, I guess, in terms of answering phones, providing and processing mail, and also processing payments that came into City Hall. They continued to work within the office, albeit in having City Hall closed. Our staff, I think, did a great job in working through this and addressing, the need for public services, which we realize are so vital. Our police department, first and foremost, responded very quickly to concerns about COVID, whether it was people gathering, whether it was folks not wearing face masks in businesses, whether it was community outreach and education. They were there and they responded. In terms of our planning and building department, led up by Kevin Thompson, he was very proactive in making sure and responding to requests for building permits. And our building inspector, our building official, was there to issue permits, most of which was often done at the front steps of City Hall. We don't believe, that there was really any delay, or any delay was minimal in terms of providing those services and continuing to provide those throughout the pandemic. And I think for the most part, we've even transitioned to some of the plan submittals to be done virtually, and I think that actually improved and enhanced service to a certain extent because we could do it more quickly in a virtual environment. Our engineering and public works department, during this period of closure, we've completed and we initiated and completed a number of really critical public works projects. I think of the taxiway rehabilitation projects that we delivered a $1 million project in the middle of the pandemic to repave our taxiway at our airport. We completed the Vista View, that slide stabilization to ensure the residents have a safe access to their homes on Vista View Drive. We completed the Safe Routes to School project, providing important pedestrian improvements, and we're on the heels of completing the signalization project that's still in the work. But we were able to really initiate and complete some really big capital improvement projects that have been on the books. And in some respects, I think it's been helpful. I understand the community maybe doesn't necessarily appreciate the fact that, you know, that those projects take a lot of staff time to complete, and sometimes the closure has helped us, you know, focus on being able to deliver projects. Last but not least, our finance team, they've continued to process utility bills, continued to answer phone calls, and respond to the community's needs. And I don't want to forget our city clerk. During the closure, we had a you know, one of our most cherished democratic functions, elections, and our city clerk, you know, did the important work of meeting with candidates, processing all the paperwork, and addressing all the election requirements through that. And so I think we came through in the sense of providing, you know, a lot of key community services, despite that the fact that the city hall was closed during this time frame. And so I recognize that you know, there's a you know, tremendous need or a tremendous desire of the community to reopen, and we are committed to doing that. But with that said, we've also wanted to look very carefully and closely to make sure that you know, reopening is done in a safe and healthy way for our community, so we can continue to provide a high level of services, but also for our city staff. You know, I want to note that, you know, currently in City Hall we have 8 employees, and you know, for most city halls, that's a really small number of employees compared to, you know, other cities that have a much larger workforce. And you know, unfortunately, during this pandemic, we did have some exposures, and we had some positive cases, which, you know, because we were closed, we were able to, you know, more readily respond to those requirements to quarantine and isolate, and often staff were able to continue to work even though they were quarantined or isolating, because we were able to establish systems to work remotely. So with that said, we put together a reopening plan implementation matrix, and we looked at a number of critical criteria. We started with the public health order requirements, which includes, you know, enhanced employee monitoring, physical distancing, and face masking. And we've thus far have been successful at implementing that at City Hall. The enhanced employee monitoring has been in place, and it's available to all staff and at all facilities. Per my direction, you know, we're to wear face masks if we're engaged in any business with one another, all the while maintaining physical distancing. But with reopening, we also acknowledge it'll be important to extend the same requirements to the community members who may want to come to City Hall. And so that those would be things we would want to implement as part of reopening, is to make sure that those measures are extended to our visitors and our community members. In addition, we also are looking at the cleaning protocols, as well as necessary building modifications that are be critical as part of reopening. One of which has come to this subcommittee, and that is ensuring, you know, that we can monitor and provide access control to lobby at City Hall. When we were open, you know, there was often times when there were you know, 8 to 10 people in our lobby, albeit usually for a very short period of time, but even with public meetings, sometimes it could get in excess of that. And we don't think that can be accomplished now under the current health order without some kind of access control. So we are bringing forward at the next council meeting a request for funding security cameras and controlled access for our front door. That will help address that. In addition, we believe that one of the key necessary building modifications is to improve ventilation in City Hall. It's been my experience that ventilation has been relatively poor at City Hall, because there's a real lack of outdoor fresh air. So what we'd like to do as part of reopening is conduct an evaluation of our HVAC system. Our internal staff don't have the professional qualifications to really analyze our HVAC system and determine, are there measures we can do to improve its, not only its efficiency, its operating efficiency, but the way in which it brings in outside air and whether there's filters or other mechanisms available to help improve air quality within City Hall. And likewise, looking at opportunities to replace some, what are majority of the windows are inoperable. They're old, they're inefficient from an energy perspective. And so we'd like to seek, at least replacement of a number of them to provide and support additional fresh air in City Hall. And we think that's a key way to, again, mitigate potential impacts from COVID is to introduce that fresh air. And likewise, I think it has other benefits, and just in terms of staff having access to, nice air. But also we did experience when especially in the Kincaid fire and even the large fire in Paradise, that during those fire events, there was a tremendous amount of smoke that came into City Hall. And it wasn't good for indoor air quality. It wasn't good for our staff. And so there's, looking at opportunities to improve that in a way that's also healthy for our staff, I think is critical. We also looked very carefully at cleaning and disinfection. Currently, we have City Hall cleaned twice per week, and then we have it disinfected once per week. And we think that's been satisfactory to addressing, ensuring City Hall's, disinfected appropriately. We do think that schedule will need to be updated and revised to accommodate, what I'm going to recommend is, a later stage of reopening, which comes with it additional costs and logistical issues relative to obtaining cleaning services more days of the week. We realize there's some challenges there. In addition, and this is kind of a later a topic, is at the point where where council decides that we want to reopen public meetings. We currently do not have a cleaning schedule or cost for our Performing Arts Center. It is, has been closed, and cleaning services haven't been provided there during the closure. So we do believe, as part of reopening that to public meetings, that there will be a need to look at an appropriate cleaning schedule and disinfection schedule for the CPAC to ensure it's safe to access for staff, for council members, as well as the community. And at this time, we don't have a complete picture of that, because I think we want additional input from council on what they'd like to see in terms of possibly holding in-person meetings. I think for us, when we look at how you staff up our City Hall, and as I indicated, right now we have 8 full-time employees. During COVID, we've operated on a relatively limited staff. Our UB staff is usually a team of 3, been operating at a team of 2, and that's been purposeful. One was because when we moved to closure, as your city manager, I was very uncertain about what the financial impacts were going to be on the city. And, I said we should be very careful backfilling that position until we have a better picture of what that looks like. But also there were some challenges to onboarding a staff member during COVID, because we believe the front desk position really needs a lot of hands-on training, especially with our utility billing software, which means close staff in close proximity. And because of that risk, and because of the health order, we decided not to backfill that, and until we get to the point of reopening. and also we have a better picture of our financial standing. Likewise, our city clerk has, through the pandemic, really tackled all these meetings. And I want to note, council has not missed a beat in all of this. They have not canceled one meeting. We've not canceled one subcommittee meeting. We've, all the meetings have been available. We've transitioned, I think, well to holding virtual meetings. And for the most part, there's been a few hiccups, but for the most part, it's been without any major disruptions. And I want to acknowledge our city clerk for the work she's done to make our meetings go so smoothly as we've transitioned to this virtual meeting environment. And also council and subcommittee members, how they functioned so well. And I think it's actually, in some respects, provided some other benefits in terms of public access. Sometimes it's challenging to go down to a physical space, and it's much easier to log into Facebook or to log into your computer or your phone. You can call in and have access to meetings. So it's kind of a new way to access the public forums, which really weren't there prior to the pandemic. And I think that's been attributable to our city clerk. But back on the staffing issue is part of reopening. We're also acknowledging that our city clerk will need some additional assistance to help manage a number of these meetings. And we think it's really a specialized position to understand all of the duties of being a deputy clerk and the nuances of the Brown Act that we'll need to upstaff that position as well, which in the meantime we've generated some cost savings for our general fund, which I think is important. Also, just in terms of the regulatory environment, I want to acknowledge that most recently we were informed that our governor signed Senate Bill 95, which mandates that we provide employee paid sick leave or supplemental paid sick leave to all of our employees. This is a measure intended to address employees that may either be subject to exposure to COVID or have family members who are exposed, or potentially even may have kids in school whose schedules are disrupted because of COVID, and requires us to provide that sick leave. And so it's an additional regulatory burden for us. I think it's beneficial for our employees because it does provide them additional leave, but it's just another consideration that we're tracking and monitoring as part of reopening. And it's more likely to be called upon should we, as we phase in and we reopen, that just potential for exposure. The probability, I guess, is maybe the right way to say it, increases. And so there's potential that this supplemental sick leave will be called into play. Likewise, we've looked closely at policies related to vaccinations. I think it's, vaccinations in most arenas is considered a way forward to address the impacts of the pandemic. As of now, our determination is that we cannot mandate it, but we've certainly, as your city manager, I've encouraged staff. I think there's enough scientific evidence in support of vaccinations, but I can also understand some staff are reticent, and we can't require it, but we are monitoring and checking on the regulations to determine how to address that. And that's just an outstanding risk and concern for us. There are employees that are unvaccinated who will come to City Hall, and it does represent a risk for us as part of reopening. So I just want to acknowledge that, but we are tracking closely. Likewise, we also of our 8 staff in City Hall, four of them, or 50% of them, have kids in school, and we acknowledge that as they begin returning to the classroom, it puts a burden on parents to address their schedules and also report back to work. And I acknowledge that and understand we have a very dedicated staff, but also recognize the importance of how they interact with their children and their school. And, it's something that I'm sensitive to, and acknowledge that, that through, a phased approach and a flexible and adaptable schedule for our staff is a way to continue to support our staff, support a phased approach to opening, but also support them in terms of addressing these needs while schools continue their transition back to some level of normalcy. But it's still in progress, and I think our plan kind of just wants to acknowledge that a flexible or hybrid schedule is going to be critical to continuing to support our employees, but also to do it in a way that addresses the health order in terms of physical distancing and working in the office, because again, the number of our spaces within City Hall are relatively constrained, and so it puts some challenges on how, if we were to all go back into City Hall, how we could actually function in a relatively small space and continue to meet the mandates of the health order. So with that said, I want to acknowledge that included in the plan is some of the work that we've prepared, particularly our HR team. Want to acknowledge the work that Shannon Peterson has done to put the Appendix A together, which addresses the health order, as well as the COVID prevention plan. And the COVID prevention plan, which is triggered by OSHA, and OSHA is, federal and the state agency that oversees workplace safety, and was a critical requirement that we addressed through this plan. And many of the things that I spoke about in terms of this reopening plan are addressed in our policy about accommodating processes for employees, COVID testing, wearing face masks, outdoor and air filtration, periodic inspections, and so forth. And happy to touch on that. I won't go into detail on that document, but that is an attachment or appendix to the reopening plan. So Mayor and Vice Chair, I'll pause there. I'm sorry for my long-winded overview of the reopening plan, but I thought it was important that really cover all aspects of this plan, because I know how important it is that we reopen. But I want to also just acknowledge that there's there's still some anxiety by our staff and concerns, because we're all concerned about our health and safety, but we're also committed to public service, and we're just trying to do it in a way that addresses both the need for our community, but also the need for our employees and our staff.
Awesome. Thank you, David. No, and I appreciate the detailed presentation, because it is a very large and important topic that has several different facets that have to be considered, and a level of let's hope is involved with almost all of them. So I appreciate the detail. And real quick, before I open up for any questions, I just want to give a shout out to a fellow HR professional. We are rarely liked until they need us. So go Shannon. Melanie, any questions or comments before we open it up to the public or anything like that? It's a pretty meaty topic.
Yeah, I'm glad the city manager dove into the issues around the theater, because that was one of my main concerns. It's pretty obvious that everybody in this Zoom meeting would max out the conference room at City Hall, which we did all the time, and we're not going to be able to do that for a long time. So I'm interested in hearing about either being able to use CPAC, being able to find another facility that is going to be amenable. I don't know what the status of the HVAC is over at CPAC, let alone the housekeeping schedule. So we probably need to have an update on that as well. I just want to also support the statement that Irene has been crushing it. She crushed it during the election, and she has just been killing it, keeping us on track, and transitioning to virtual meetings. So there's a lot of credit goes to her, and and everybody who supports her at City Hall. So yeah, she deserves a tremendous amount of credit for us to be just being able to just with just a couple of little bumps, just getting right on to, being able to conduct the city business in this past year or so. Other than that, yeah, it was very, very thorough, David. Thank you very much. I'm really concerned about folks coming back to City Hall. I mean, it was, everybody caught everybody else's cold before the pandemic. That building there's already a problem there. So I'm very concerned about the ability for it to, to be at capacity again, which I don't think it's realistic. So it might be time to kind of, look at some other space possibilities to expand as well.
And Melanie, I think I've heard through the grapevine that you brought this up as well. And so I just kind of want to throw it in real quick. Looking at the infrastructure costs in regards to bolstering our HVAC and all the other things that might be required, and then looking at the success that was just described to us in this very hybrid approach and remote environment, at the risk of being kicked off the Zoom call, I wonder how we look at our relationship to brick and mortar moving forward. And looking at potentially unleashing some funds on a police department, and is there feasibility for consolidation? Anyway, I don't want to get too far off the res here, but I'm continuously seeing the CDC taking a little bit different approach week in and week out as things kind of show up as hurdles. One of the articles I read today on the internet, so you got to take that with a grain of salt, but nonetheless, is that the CDC is trying to get away from over inundating signage, from contact transfers and stuff like that. And so I'm not going to ramble on here because Lord knows I'm guilty of that, but I guess I'll get to my point and say my two major questions are, and this is tough to answer, but David, when does reopening become more expensive than what we can provide? And with that being said, if there are areas in which we have seen some gaps, maybe it's based on feedback from the community or what you may have be hearing in feedback that you get from other council members. What's it look like to hone in on those gaps and try and maybe resolve some of the service level agreements there in order to buy some more time in the reopening procedure, be able to kind of juggle the compassion of having school aged parents that are a part of our city staff workforce and things of that nature, because I don't want to come across like I'm saying reopening is not important. I don't think that reopening is not important. It's very important that we reopen, but it's also very important, in my personal opinion, that we reopen in a very calculated and deliberate manner, because as you mentioned with SB 95, if I remember my reading of it correctly, that's 80 hours. That's not in our budget. That is afforded to individuals should they have COVID exposure, family member, or even, as I recall, reactions to the vaccine. And I really appreciate that you're factoring into your plan that those are unfunded mandates on the city, that if something is to occur, it's not money that we've allocated in the form of a sick bank or a PTO bank or anything. And I'm not trying to get dystopian. Money doesn't rule everything, but you got to have it to stay open. And so I really like the approach that you're being calculative with those aspects. And so it makes me wonder if the approach forward from here is to look at where we may have identified gaps in service. How do we address that in our current environment, in our current COVID protective environment, and then kind of pivot from there. And if there's ways that we can move the needle in our existing environment, and we can kind of hold back on bringing physical presence to City Hall, which then opens up more potential for health and safety issues, maybe we see some success there. Before we use the reopening as maybe a test, as maybe a test, because first and foremost, you mentioned we're gonna have to change behaviors a little bit. So that might, I think your plan called for a greeter. has that position been staffed at this time? You mentioned that there's concerns over the proximity in which two individuals need to be near one another to complete the training for utility billing. If we open up before you're afforded the opportunity to do that in a safe manner, have we set that aspect of City Hall up for failure? Again, these are just question marks that I have next to a really comprehensive report that I can't expect you to know the answers to, because there's such a heavy amount of unknown. So now my mind is going to, how can I mitigate those risks? And so I'll just kind of leave it at that, so to speak, so it can be remotely helpful what I'm trying to say. But to summarize, maybe we try and fix some of the service level gaps with our existing program, and then really look at a slow rollout, phased approach, giving the council the context that this committee has been afforded of, it's not just pandemic, it's also school-aged children, it's also X, Y, and Z, and the costs that come along with it. Does that make sense? Okay. Sorry, Kevin, you got your hand up. Go right ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just want to piggyback off what you're saying is we are expecting to go live with our OpenGov permitting software this month, which I don't know the exact number, but if I was going to estimate, I would say a decent percentage of people coming to City Hall are for building permits. And this is something that we have been needing to do forever, but I'm just really excited. Right now we have a building inspector who sets aside an hour a day for folks coming up. The question might be, after OpenGov is open, do we need that? And it might just be by appointment only, freeing up his time to do other things. So that's really exciting. People will be able to do it from home, obviously, any time of the day. The other thing that we did talk about a little bit at our staff meeting is the kitchen situation at City Hall. It's as you've been in there, it's really small. So one of the ideas that I think Sandy had was to maybe put a picnic bench outside with an umbrella, just, as something that employees could go eat outside and be away. Because that, obviously the kitchen's about, maybe 10 by 10.
Mm-hmm.
So just a couple of points.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that context. And it's just it's a tough situation, because you're kind of rolling the dice, in my opinion, regardless of what you do, to maintain a temporary remote work status. Am I rolling the dice on the level of service that the community can expect? If I make it the priority to bring physical people back to City Hall, am I rolling the dice on their health and safety? And it's just, I'm finding it to be a challenging line to navigate, which I'm sure we can all relate to. I do appreciate that context.
What I come back to is, sorry, it's just, in my business, it's what's the business case for what you're doing? That's the bottom line. What's the business case? I mean, if City Hall needs to be open and there needs to be a greeter there of some kind, and they never are going to see Kevin, and David's in his office, people don't know if they're at home doing their job or if they're in their office doing their job. I mean, that's the thing, is that we've actually been able to maintain an incredible level of professional, we're getting business done. And, most people are needing to do it from home for various reasons. I mean, if I go in and pick up my mail, I might see Sandy, and that's it. Or I might see Irene if we've made an appointment, but, and that's probably the appropriate density, in that building right now. It's like, two people on opposite ends of it and one person coming in and getting their mail and leaving. So, I'm just asking also from a competitive side, as far as being able to keep and attract employees, what is it that people are doing that they actually have to be on site for? There are certain jobs where, they're opening the mail, they're processing, water bills there, and that needs to be on site. But a lot of the other stuff that people do, it's all on email and it's all on the internet anyway. And the only thing that they really need to be in person for are, for either staff meetings or meetings with the public, which aren't happening. So I kind of come down to, what's the real business case and what's the real staffing level that really needs to be happening. I mean, the other kind of wild card in all of this is the really antiquated phone system and voicemail system. If we had a VoIP system, just like the OpenGov and the building permits going to, they're going to be online very shortly. If we had an actually a modern phone system, those calls could be answered from anywhere in the world. So I guess that's kind of my thought process as I look at going back to staffing City Hall. Is it, what is the business case for each of the positions, and what really needs an in-person when you really need somebody to be there, and when is it just, it's actually more effective for people to be working home. But government and businesses everywhere are asking themselves these questions, is that, do we really need to maintain all of this overhead and pay rent and pay all of these utility bills, and when we could be doing it in a much more efficient manner? But I think that you kind of touched on, Jason, I think you touched on something that I think I've talked about in previous meetings, and that is that the stress level of the pressure to reopen on families who have had kids at home for a year, and just like the expectation that, well, everybody's just going to go back to work and work levels are just going to go right back to where they were, when they're when kids or people just kind of reflects the passage of SB 95, we're still dealing with extraordinary circumstances. There's still a tremendous amount of unpredictability, a tremendous amount of stress. And I think it's going to take I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that we're not just going to, I don't want to see City Hall, packed to the gills and gone back to normal, because I don't think that world really exists anymore.
Yeah,
So
I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, I just, pardon my rambling. So there's my rambling, and there are my thoughts.
Yeah, no, and I'm not going to do it again, because I run the risk the moment I start talking. But this is a challenging issue, and I really, really applaud the comprehensive report you guys put together. And what it really detailed was that reopening is not as simple as picking up the phone and saying, "All right, y'all, time to come back to the office." It is miles from that, and I think that in itself is an incredible contextual aspect to say. It's not just reopening City Hall. It's all the details that go along with bringing a physical presence back into a confined space. And I don't know what to recommend for you right now.
What's really, and I think we have to examine what's necessary and what's perception, what's just perception. So, but I will say, as far as people doubting vaccine, I'm scheduled for my first one on Tuesday. So I'm going for it. I'm going to be an example and let everybody know that I'm like, no, I'm going to get my vaccine, everybody.
Yeah. As a healthcare professional, I was fully vaccinated on the 19th of January. No additional limbs. No, nothing like that. No one tracks me.
Can't blame it on the vaccine.
Yeah, none of that. I'm still here and kicking. So just a testimony to the hell. Anyway.
Yeah.
So let me open it up to the public here. I still got a few folks online. Let me see if any hands go up. I'm looking now. Any comment, feel free to raise your hand.
And I apologize for the echo earlier. I was having a major computer meltdown.
I've been there. All right, not seeing any hands go up. David, I don't know that you were necessarily looking for definitive action from us today, or if it was more of an update. Or are you asking us if we should bring this topic to council? Are you kind of seeing the temperature that you got from this subcommittee and re-looking at things? Kind of where are you at right now?
Well, I think there was some interest by members of council to reopen City Hall, and that's why we did want to look at this issue comprehensively and bring it to this subcommittee for your review and input. You've given us, I think, some good feedback and things that we may want to update this. But I guess really kind of get a sense of whether you support what we've identified in terms of implementation measures and consideration, reopening City Hall. A big part of it is, the phased approach.
Mhm.
And then, the timing. I'm hearing from this subcommittee, at least in terms, it sounds like there's, support for, phased approach. Because of the
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's very, very thoughtful, very thorough, and I think it has to be that phased approach, because if at any point we do need to pull back, you
Yep.
can just, pull back and
Agreed.
make some changes and reevaluate. So I think you've taken a really good approach.
And I think if possible, when presented to council, I think what was pretty eyebrow raising for me was starting to run through my head what the real costs were going to be to make sure that City Hall is pandemic prepared. It's pretty sizable, and comparing that to the service level agreements that we've been able to establish working in this hybrid version that we're in, it does offer some apples to apples comparisons, in my opinion, about what it truly means, both fiscally and for personnel to reopen City Hall. And again, why the phased approach is so important for this, because to Melanie's point, the moment things go in a different way than we thought, we have the opportunity to go back before we've implemented everything all at once.
And one of the things I failed to mention was both Irene and I surveyed our other city partners in Sonoma County. So far, it appears that the consensus for reopening is more in line with timing wise around mid-June. Some maybe again a little bit earlier, following a similar approach where it's phased. It's let's kind of transition back to a modest reopening, and just try to address if there's anybody that's missing certain municipal services that they don't otherwise have access to, that provides a venue for that. But timing wise, again, it tends to be targeted more to mid-June, and some of that's actually tied to more of the connection to council than it is necessarily to staff or city services. I think it's that forum in which to engage engage you as council members, in democracy. But with that said, it seems like the tools that we've utilized to provide virtual access have been fairly well utilized, and it's fairly simple and easy. You pick up a phone or hit a Zoom link, and you're able to access all of our meetings.
Awesome. All right. Anything else you guys need from us on this one for today?
No, I think that's it, Mayor. We wanted to present this. I think there was a call to action for staff to bring it forward. And if you think we should refine it and kind of then bring it back, if you feel we should bring this to council sooner than later, we can work on trying to bring that forward quickly. But if you think we should kind of revamp it based on comments, and we'll then bring it back to council, we can do that.
I think
I
if
don't know, Melanie,
schedule
what do you
allows it.
think?
I think if schedule allows, I think it's ready to present.
Yeah. All right, cool. I agree with that. Get the whole council's kind of input, allow the public to really digest it, and kind of move it out of the subcommittee venue and into the limelight. So I agree with that. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, you guys. Any final comments before we move on? Hearing none. All right, great. Thank you, everybody. City Hall, city staff, HR. Woo! Anyhow,
a win.
item number 6 now, standing items. Yeah. St. Joseph Health, building self-healing communities. I didn't see an update from Becky or her on the call today. Anything from city staff on this one?
No updates, Mayor, Vice Chair.
Excellent. And then B, I think we covered quite a bit of this in the reopening discussion. However, David, anything that we might want to call out in item 6B, please, now is the time.
The only thing I want to point to is the effort through the Resilient Cloverdale to draft a strategic plan, or an updated strategic plan to address not only the pandemic but potential for wildfire as we start to move into more defined fire season is underway, and we'll continue to not a lot to update at this point because we just initiated that effort, but there may be more to report out in the future on that.
Great, thanks. Melanie, any questions here? Okay, just open it up to the public. Any questions on the brief update we were provided? Seeing no hands go up. 3, 2, 1. Okay, moving right along. Irene, would you be so kind as to scroll the screen down just a little bit? So now we have an update on Sonoma County homeless emergency response. Any updates there since our last meeting?
Yeah, happy to provide a quick update. Just starting with local efforts, we have a community advisory, the homeless community advisory group meeting scheduled virtually on Tuesday of next week. Staff's been working on the agenda. A couple of key items on that is going to be an update from our city attorney's office on some of the recent court cases that are affecting how cities respond to homelessness. And then, our goal is to kind of recap some of the efforts and progress we made previously and get that process reinitiated. Also providing an update on the concurrent strategic planning effort through the Northern Sonoma County homelessness process led up by Supervisor Gore, which focuses on Northern Sonoma County. So those will be critical updates. And at the county level, there's a kind of a reformulated continuum of care with the new membership for the Leadership Council. And we were notified, or not notified, it was informed last week that our local homelessness service provider, Reach for Home, was provided a grant for a vehicle to provide outreach services. And I thought that was important because it's been something that's been identified as a real need to help them deliver street medicine and services to our homeless community, especially finding ourselves in COVID, to be able to provide those outreach services. So and we're lucky to have both the representative of Reach for Home as well as a staff member from City of Healdsburg, Stephen Sotomayor, along with another staff member with Verona Park on that Leadership Council, really representing the interests of small cities. So it's great to have them there. And there's some interest in looking at the Sonoma County Community Development Commission and the delivery of services, which will be an update to the Board of Supervisors on April 14th, which is going to provide an overview of some different options for the county to consider in terms of how homeless services are provided in the future in Sonoma County. So that'll be something very interesting to follow. That, Mayor, Vice Chair, that concludes my update on homelessness and emergency response.
Excellent. It seems like a good spot to offer a little bit of extra context to the CDC and the continuum of care. David, you were on the call along with Vice Mayor Cruz and other members of the COC regarding a recommendation for asking the Board of Supervisors to, on an interim basis, hire someone specific to the CDC rather than having them also be over public health while they look at longer term recruitment strategies. And I gave James Gore, our district supervisor, a call today, and he was able to get back to me right before I hopped on this call, and just let him know that me as the mayor, I found that to be a very thought-provoking concept and would allow the individual chose as the interim CDC leader to really focus on housing and homelessness as it pertains to our region as a whole. And it sounds like from our district supervisor, there is a level of support in that concept. And so I just kind of wanted to share that in this item as something that's ongoing. All we can really do as a mayor or as a city is offer our recommendation. Ultimately, it is their decision to make. But I just thought I would update the group that I did have a chance to speak with Supervisor Gore. And And due to the timing, I did not have permission to speak on behalf of our council, but I did speak to him on behalf of myself. So I just thought I would share that. And that also concludes any additional information I had. So any questions for what either I or David has shared at this point? Any mayors, how could you or how dare you? No? Okay, good. I like that. All right. So any questions from the public? Let's see if any hands come up here. Let's see here. Any questions regarding this topic? 3, 2, 1, no hands. Okay, we'll go ahead and move right on. Looks like D, update on Measure P and cannabis permits, as well as funding allocations. Any updates since our last meeting?
The Cloverdale Wellness was issued their permit. They've been remodeled. This is the second dispensary that's going above the second floor of the Shaini building.
Okay.
I've been out there with Lieutenant Parker a few times to check the security, and they put a lot of work into it. So that's an update.
Awesome.
Oh, that's
And we
great.
also, and we also just completed the compliance audits. Compliance audit.
Okay.
You know, I think that in the, like, was it, I remember the last council meeting, this came up and we were talking about, and you asked the question, Mayor, about like, why is the budget for cannabis, or why is it so low? Why was it so low?
Mhm.
And I was kind of expecting a city manager or finance director to pipe up, but yeah, previous councils purposely had set it really low.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
No expectations.
Yeah.
So we couldn't be disappointed.
little did they know cannabis is pandemic proof, and you know.
Well, I don't think anybody knew that. Yeah. But I mean, yeah,
Cool.
I mean, Susie, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just kind of, you know, I was kind of new on council when that all happened. And I remember they were just like, it was purposely set really conservatively.
Yeah, we had no trends to go by.
Yeah, there was no information.
Kind of each year we go, oh, I think we'll probably get what we got the year before.
We get more.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right, let me see any questions
Yeah,
from
but
the
that
public
meeting
on
had
this
gone
one?
late enough, so I didn't want to bring it up.
I hear you. All right, no hands going up. Any final questions or comments on this item? All right, thank you for the update. I appreciate that. We'll look forward to seeing how, what are they called again? Cloverdale Wellness?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see how they do getting stood up. All right, update on transit occupancy tax services, please. Any updates since our last meeting?
Yes, so at the last council meeting, it was suggested that we might want to do audits, which we have held off on doing just because of the pandemic. We did budget to do one this year, but we just haven't. So I wanted to bring forward a couple options to consider. When talking with HDL, they gave us a scope of work because we did our business license with them. They would offer to do either just the audits, which we currently have 11 registered TOT businesses. So if we did 11 businesses at $1,500 a piece is the price to do one audit. Let me just get to my spreadsheet that's included. It would be $16,500. And that's a one-time, you know, cost until we do it again, right? Because it's just for the audit. We're just only asking them to do the audit. If we ask them to do all of the administration, including the audits, they would do it for $650 per registered TOT business. So that would be $7,150, but that would be an annual cost. And all of this is on page 56 of your agenda packet. Currently, staff time and forms and mailings, the cost is about $17,000. I decided to do it exactly the same as I did for the business license. So $17,000 for staff to do it annually, $16,500 for audit only, and then you don't have to do anything else until you want to do another audit, or you could do the whole administration, which would be $7,150 annually. when we did the audit in 2015, to give some context, we had 12 businesses and the city received $20,000 in revenue that was missed from the. So you would almost wash what, if the results were the same, the cost to do it would be about the same as what you received. So couple of options, and we just kind of wanted to get an idea of if there might be some interest in having HDL do the administration of all of the TOT and taking that away from staff completely.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, I think this is, in part predicated on, council's interest in, engaging with our lodging providers to do annual audits as well. Right now it's really at the city's discretion, the timing and frequency of conducting audits. The proposal as the options as outlined by our finance director, kind of involve, from a frequency of kind of one as you see fit to, an annual program of audits of our lodging industry. So as you can imagine, those have different effects on our lodging industry as well. They do report to us annually or quarterly. Currently, their TOT revenues. But we don't as staff audit them, so it's usually now we procure. Again, this proposal is really a one-time audit, a multi-year audit, or an annual audit to complete administration of the TOT program at a reduced costs to. Or reduction in the amount of staff time that'd be necessary, because they would basically oversee the entire program.
And I also just wanted to point out the revenue that we're receiving this year comparative to the previous years is on page 56. I broke it out by quarter just so you could see that this year we actually received an additional 50,000 that was actually for the previous year. So this year we've only received for this year, for this fiscal year, about $40,000, $42,000, where normally we would see more like $130,000 at this point in time. So is this a good time to even consider an audit? Yeah, so that's why I wanted to bring all of this forward to kind of get an idea.
So I had a question. I know that there's been some discussion amongst the council to, possibly raise TOT. And I'm just wondering if the time to do an audit might be not during a pandemic. And maybe we look at, and if there's still an appetite for increasing TOT, next year or the following year, that we do that, and then maybe the audit, reconsider doing an audit a year or two into the increased TOT. What do you think about that approach?
Yep. Because my question was going to be, what percentage of the revenue in 2010 was represented and missed, right? So that audit did about $20,000. What percentage of the revenue did that represent? And then you told me the revenue for this year, the previous year during the pandemic, is $40,000, and I refuse to believe we missed 50% of our potential TOT tax, which makes me immediately align with Melanie. The data skew due to the pandemic. It doesn't seem like the timing's appropriate.
I fully agree that this is not the right time. But since it was brought up at council, when are we going to do the audit? I wanted to bring it forward as an option.
Okay. And
so
go ahead,
Melanie.
it was part of the discussion, the information we asked from HDL. So because they're already doing that service. So, yeah, but I wonder if it's just if it's the appropriate time.
Because I'd hate to spend $1,700 or $17,000 in a year like this, and they come back and they go, "Yep, we had findings, man. $700 y'all
You
missed."
missed $500.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you missed
Yeah,
$5,000
exactly.
and it cost you. Yeah. That doesn't sound good.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that update and completely respect that it was a request of ours as a council, but with the context that you've provided, it's my personal opinion that we hold off till we have a more stable year in which to audit the findings, and as long as Melanie agrees with that. Oh,
Yeah.
and I need to open it to the public.
I do agree. And I guess I'd want to hear too, it's like if you were saying that, this is taking such a huge chunk of hours for staff that could be better spent, then I would be open to hearing that, but that's not what I'm hearing.
Right. Any comments from the public or questions about this particular item? Seeing no hands go up. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Public comment is closed. Any final comments on this before we move on to the next item? Great. Okie doke. That puts us on to update on utility user tax ordinance. Any updates since our last meeting? I didn't see anything on the agenda for this one.
Yeah, again, that was, the ordinance is in your packet.
Yep, there it is.
Question that was brought up at the last council meeting about what are the requirements with the new UUT tax, not new UUT, but the extended UUT tax. And so I just wanted to bring forward this ordinance that shows that in 25 and fiscal year 25-26 is the first year that we need to actually have our 3-member committee review the tax.
Yeah, that was my question.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you.
right. Yep. I remember when
Appreciate
this
it.
came up. It was when do we have to make sure we offer oversight? And you're letting us know the first year that we have to make sure there's an appointed oversight is fiscal year 25-26.
Correct.
All right.
And-
Any questions from the pub? Oh, go ahead, David, please.
Mayor and Vice Chair, and I was just going to note that while the ordinance is definitive in terms of the timeframe for the 3-member committee, there's nothing preventing council, if you so desire, to operationalize that committee, in advance of this timeframe. It's really a policy decision. Legally, we're not required until fiscal year 25-26. But if you thought it was prudent or otherwise there were some benefits to appointing a committee sooner, or getting that committee together to review it, staff could certainly do that, or even start, say, in an earlier year, with literally just 4 months under our belt. It probably doesn't make sense to do that now, but I just wanted to point that out, that you could certainly do it sooner if council was inclined.
Okay, great. Any questions for David or Susie before I open it up to the public? All right, would anyone from the public like to ask me questions, have any comments? Seeing no hands go up. All right, thanks you guys, appreciate the update. All right, next we are on to update on pension liability legislation, financing tool, and other.
No updates, Mayor.
Excellent. Update on OpenGov, please.
Susie.
OpenGov, we continue to do we're creating our budget. We continue every day working to build the reports that we want to share. And we are on track and going forward with the budgeting and planning. I think it's called budgeting and planning. And then there's a building permit.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, building permit is scheduled to go online this month. There's been lots of meetings. There's lots of intricacies in the building permit. But we've been working through those 1-2 meetings a week, and we're hopeful it's going to be ready very soon.
is there go live support for the public's interface? I imagine there's some for staff's interface with it, but is there support for the public's interface with OpenGov as well?
Hmm.
I have not heard that. I'm not sure I mean, what we've seen to date is very simple. We spent a lot of time, for example, on the building permit, trying to put extra language in a drop down, like if it says, HVAC or something, maybe the lay people don't know what that means. Putting extra descriptors in there, but I'm not sure, and I don't believe there is like an on-call help for users.
Okay. If people ultimately become frustrated, where do we naturally see them headed from there? Maybe
So,
probably
ourselves,
calling
yeah.
at that point. Okay, all right, as long as we have something set up. Yeah, all right, cool. Any questions or comments on OpenGov at this time? See if there's any questions, comments from the public. Not seeing any hands go up. David, go right ahead, please.
Mayor, I just was going to mention that, our finance team, Susie and Shannon, have been working on budget development, and we're planning to hold the budget workshop as we indicated in our goal update on Wednesday, May 5th. We did want to get your input, as it relates to OpenGov on that workshop date and time. If there's any perspective, if you're looking for an earlier day, or if you'd like it to be, in the afternoon, your feedback would be important. And it'll probably be a real-time decision whether we can kind of unveil OpenGov at that time, and some of the budget book details. I know Susie and the team has been working on that, and I think it's gonna. I'm excited, and staff has really appreciated having this new software for our budget process. It's been so much more efficient, and I think we're still learning this year. It's going to be, I think, going to be easier going forward using OpenGov, and it'll be fun to start using the data tools that are available to us and will be available to the community as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Susie. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, already we're seeing a 50% cut in the amount of time that it's taking us to complete the budgets just in the departments. We've always done 2 3-hour meetings, and we've only needed one for every single one of them. It's been a blessing and amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. David, when you said you were looking for input, are you asking about when I would be available for that budget workshop, or to ensure that I give feedback during said budget workshop?
Well, yeah, if you want to give us your feedback on, a date, we'll one, confirm that date works for the Finance, Admin, and Police Subcommittee, including the mayor and vice chair. But if the subcommittee is inclined on the time to offer perspective on the time for that meeting, whether an earlier start in the day is beneficial, or if we want to go ahead and target more of an evening or late afternoon meeting for that day.
I'm sorry, I'm going to totally give my vulnerability here. What date?
Wednesday, May 5th.
Oh, okay. No, I'm gonna. What my plan is to take the day off work, because I know these are involved discussions, and I don't think it would be as impactful to try and wait on my schedule and do these in the evening. I just think people would be kind of spent. So I'm gonna move my kind of day around, so to speak, and take the day off work to accommodate that. So that's my plan at this time. Yeah.
So an earlier start time to a workshop.
Earlier start times. I just realized I have a smart board meeting at 1:30.
Yep. So earlier works for me too, David. I'm going to get out ahead of
budget
this
meeting.
and take the day off work.
Budget meeting followed by smart will be fantastic on Cinco de Mayo. So I'm probably going to have like a picture of margaritas, I'll have a picture of margaritas after both of those meetings.
Yeah. Cool. But yeah, no, I definitely want to make sure that I'm as flexible on my end to make it as impactful for staff as possible. And I can totally empathize with Melanie's triple bookage. So yeah, earlier the better.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other final questions or comments on, let's see here, OpenGov before I move on? All right. Let's see here. Update on SB 1383, short-lived climate pollutants, organic waste methane emissions reductions. Any updates since our last meeting?
No updates, Mayor. We just continue to work with Zero Waste Sonoma on developing an ordinance and an MOU for council's consideration.
Fantastic. I think we know the chair of Zero Waste too. We might want to do some lobbying. All right, moving right along, technology improvements. We talked about this just a little bit during the reopening procedures, but interested to hear any updates or call outs for VoIP. Or I'm sorry, yeah, VoIP and, oh no, I'm getting myself confused. We were talking about cameras. This is different. Any updates on this particular item since our last meeting?
Staff has not further explored this. We're going to kind of initially take a look at our phone tree system and see what opportunities there are to improve that so that it's more user friendly for the community, and determine whether we can set up our phone system for better use by our council as well. So those are two things that we're looking at as kind of intermediate steps before moving to a VoIP system.
Yeah, and it almost sounds to me, based on our dialogue earlier, and I really welcome Melanie to offer some input here as appropriate, but it almost seems like the way we discussed reopening City Hall as it pertains to, you know, the pandemic and such, that VoIP not being an option of ours is a bit of a hurdle. So I almost wonder what Melanie's appetite is to kind of move this up on the priority list a little bit, or is there a glaring aspect that I might be missing where this is like $100,000 endeavor or something like that?
Well, I think what's critical to VoIP from my perspective is upgrading our internet service. And we had been working with building a redundant internet service provider to City Hall, which also happens to be a VoIP system provider. But I think for us, key is to build that redundancy in our internet system first, and then that would support, that would provide, that's like the backbone that would support then a new phone system. So I guess stepwise, we really want to, I got pretty good proposals to bring in, gigabit service. And I think that's what's so critical to establishing a VoIP system. So we have that redundancy, because without it, we're just really relying on our POTS, as we call it, our plain old telephone system.
That's funny. All right, Melanie, anything you want to add to that? I kind of put you on the spot there.
Nope, that's about right.
All right,
Gotta have
thank you.
bandwidth.
Appreciate
Gotta have
that.
bandwidth.
Yep. Agreed. Let's see. Any comments from the public, please? Any opportunity? Not seeing any hands go up. See, Irene, I'm getting more efficient, giving you the day off today. All right. That moves us to future agenda items. There's one here for discussing options for funding street improvements and paving. If I remember correctly, this was here last time. So I think we're just looking to get this in as a standing item. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think we're going to be bringing forward a discussion about using SB1 funds, the council, and we have a project in mind. I think, along with that will be funding options. Otherwise, we need to probably have a more robust discussion around how we as a city want to fund street improvements and if there's other alternatives. But staff's not ready to bring that robust discussion forward yet.
Okay, no problem. Any questions or comments on this one at the moment?
No, but
Any other items? Yeah.
I have a kind of I don't know if it's really related or not, but I do have, we have a meeting scheduled with SCTA regarding the OBAC 3 funding that will be coming up with, I don't know who else is coming, but I know it's Eric and I know I'm invited and members of SCTA, and they're actually, going to try to help us position ourselves, look at our capital improvement project lists and try to position ourselves for some success with that funding source. So that's more fun. It's coming up, I think, next week or 2 weeks from now. So I'll be working on that. And then I do have a couple of items that I would like to have considered, but there were late emails that came in. And the first would be, I did have an email and a short discussion with the senior center requesting possibly revisiting the DASH program. Because apparently it's been, well, it's the RIDE program that the Healdsburg Senior Center received grant funding from Caltrans, and it's been incredibly successful, and it's definitely needed here in Cloverdale. And they were wondering about the status of that grant funding and it possibly being able to apply for it again in another round, and partnering with the Healdsburg Senior Center for them to do the administration. So they just brought that to my attention as something that's still a real need in Cloverdale, is senior transportation. And then another item that has kind of come up in doing some business over the last couple of weeks is probably the need for like a constituent management database. So when or a CRM of some kind, when a letter or a request comes in via email to a council member, we might hand it off to the city manager, or say what's the best route to solve this issue. And what happens is that just everything it may get handled, but there isn't any kind of loop closed. Like as a council member, you don't know that, oh, well, it actually got addressed and it actually got solved. And then like the initial person who called in the question or complaint, you'll hear back from them, hey, I haven't heard anything. Well, it might have actually, the issue might have actually been resolved, but you don't know. And possibly the person who brought it to our attention, they don't know that anything's been done. And it's just, just good customer service to kind of, close the communication loop. And there's no way to look up the status of a complaint or a concern. I don't think that staff does. I don't think staff has any way to look it up either. And it just sort of all gets lost in email. So I was wondering, since we do have the budget process coming up, if we might want to, consider some kind of constituent management application, so that we at least know where things are in the process of being addressed.
I love that idea personally. I just absolutely love it. You get a lot of emails, you take steps with them, you try and go back and close the loop, but a lot of times until it's done, your email has a lot of kind of TBDs or ... or more to come or whatever. And then the chaos of the role kind of gets your mind on other things, and what is a really respectable and correct thing to do, which is closing the loop. Even by my own fault, it doesn't get done as you focus on other things. And this would be an incredible tool to ensure that there is this perception that we do hear you, right? And so anyway, that really piqued my interest, Melanie, and I don't know what it looks like to implement, but really piqued my interest. So I think that's a fantastic idea.
And I think it would probably eventually live here. So I was hoping if we could, do some research and perhaps be able to make some recommendations to the council, and then we can, make some budget decisions. And it may be that we can't afford to do it, this year, but it's a goal. It's just that, operationally, one of the things that I've really been missing the last couple of years are even the project status reports that we used to get, that would just show each department and the projects they're working on, what the status is, and we would get a regular update on that. And that at least that would also keep us in the loop of what's going on where, instead of having to constantly ask David or constantly ask like, what's going on with this project, or what have you heard about this? You just can go to a monthly report and just be like, oh, it's here are all the actions that have been taken. It was great because it would be sorted in reverse chronological order. So at the top, you'd see this is exactly where the status of that project is. It just keeps you from bugging staff on, what's going on at City Park or what's going on with this project and all that kind of stuff. Cause you just get that status report and you're done. So I think that would really be helpful in, now that, I'm going to knock on wood here when I say this, it's like, we're hopefully moving out of crisis mode, maybe not hopefully not into another crisis for, I don't know, at least a month, but we need to start being, more proactive and, have a regular update as opposed to, I better send David an email because I just thought of something at 10:30 at night that I was wondering about.
Hey, get out of my head.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I didn't mean to diagnose anything there.
I think that's incredible, and I absolutely support hearing what options could be considered, and putting a little bit of time into that. And yeah, I really like that concept. Yeah. All right. Any other future agenda items from staff or anything in that regard? Anything the public would like us to put on our agenda? Seeing any hands? Yeah. Nope. All right. Thank you. Pending items looks to be none. Any good of the order for anybody? I was going to share the Gore thing, but it came up more appropriately earlier. So any other items?
No, hopefully I'll see some of you in line tomorrow at the Smart Station where I'll be getting my shot. So
yeah, good. Right on. All right. With that, city staff, thank you for an incredible agenda. Thank you for all the help on the reopening of City Hall. Chief Ferguson, thanks for the efforts with the leash law and everything like that. Consider this meeting adjourned. Next meeting Monday, May 3rd at 5 p.m. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.